Chapter 1. The night. Everything changed. The rain came down in sheets, turning the forest road into a river of mud and broken branches. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as lightning split the sky, illuminating the twisted pines that seemed to lean toward my car like gnarled fingers reaching for prey. I shouldn't have taken this route. I shouldn't have left at all. But staying in that town, in that house where whispers followed me like shadows, where even my own family looked at me with a mixture of pity and fear, would have killed something inside me. Something I wasn't ready to lose. Cursed, they'd said, touched by darkness, all because of a birthmark. A strange, intricate pattern of silver lines that wrapped around my left shoulder blade like ancient writing. My grandmother had the same mark. She'd died alone, shunned by everyone, even her own children. My mother never spoke of her except to warn me. Hide it, Sera. Never let anyone see. I'd hidden it for 23 years. And still somehow they knew. The car sputtered, engine choking on the rain. My heart lurched as the dashboard lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. The vehicle coasted to a stop in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by forest so dense I couldn't see more than a few feet beyond the road. No. I turned the key. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. My phone had no signal. Hadn't had signal for the last 30 miles. The nearest town was at least 20 miles behind me, and I'd been driving for 2 hours trying to reach the remote cabin my college roommate said I could use. It's isolated, Maya had promised. Perfect for disappearing for a while. Thunder rolled across the sky, so deep I felt it in my chest. I grabbed my jacket and phone, knowing both would be useless but unable to sit in the dead car like a sitting duck. The moment I opened the door, rain lashed against my face, instantly soaking through my clothes. I stumbled forward, squinting through the downpour. Maybe there was a house nearby. Maybe I could find shelter until the storm passed. That's when I heard it, a sound that didn't belong to any storm, low, guttural, and distinctly alive. A growl that raised every hair on my body and sent my ancestors' survival instincts screaming through my veins. I froze, water streaming down my face, and slowly turned toward the tree line. 2 eyes glowed in the darkness. Amber, burning like coals. The creature stepped onto the road, and my breath caught in my throat. It was massive, far too large to be a normal wolf. Its fur was midnight black, sleek with rain, and its shoulders came up to my chest. Power radiated from it in waves I could almost feel against my skin. It limped. Even in my terror, I noticed the hitch in its gait, the way it favored its left side. Dark liquid, blood, matted the fur along its ribs. We stared at each other. I should have run. Every rational thought in my head screamed at me to run, but I'd spent my entire life running from fear, from judgment, from whispers that followed me like ghosts. And this creature, this impossible thing, looked at me not with hunger, but with something that looked almost like recognition. "You're hurt," I heard myself say, my voice barely audible over the rain. The wolf's ears twitched. Its eyes narrowed, studying me with an intelligence that no animal should possess. I took a step closer. Insane. This was insane. "I won't hurt you," I continued, speaking more to calm myself than anything. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together. There's a first aid kit in my car. I don't know if it would help, but... The wolf made a sound. Not quite a growl, not quite a whine. It swayed slightly, and I realized it was weaker than I'd thought. Whatever had injured it had taken a toll. Before I could second-guess myself, I moved back to the car and grabbed the emergency kit from the trunk. My grandmother's voice echoed in my mind, one of the few memories I had of her. "The marked ones have always been healers, Sera. That's why they fear us. We see what others can't." When I turned back, the wolf had collapsed on the roadside, its massive body heaving with labored breaths. I approached slowly. Kit clutched to my chest like a shield. "I'm going to help you," I said softly, kneeling in the mud beside it. "Please don't eat me." Up close, the injury was worse than I'd thought. Deep gashes raked across its side, claw marks. Something had attacked it. Something with considerable strength. I worked quickly, using bottled water to clean the wounds, my hands steadying as I fell into the familiar rhythm of care. I'd volunteered at an animal shelter through college, had always felt more comfortable with creatures than people. They didn't judge, didn't whisper. The wolf remained eerily still, those amber eyes fixed on my face the entire time. I could feel the heat radiating from its body, see the way its muscles tensed beneath my touch but never struck. "There," I said finally, sitting back on my heels. "I've done what I can, but you need proper medical attention. If I knew where a veterinarian was..." I laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "I don't even know where I am." The wolf's gaze shifted to my shoulder, to exactly where my birthmark hid beneath my soaked shirt. Its eyes widened, and a sound rumbled from deep in its chest, not threatening, almost wondering. Lightning flashed again, and in that brief illumination, I could have sworn I saw something shift in its features. Something almost human in the tilt of its head, the expression in its eyes. Then it stood, faster than anything that injured should move, and pressed its massive head against my hand. The gesture was so deliberate, so gentle that tears pricked my eyes. "You're welcome," I whispered. It turned and limped back into the forest, pausing once to look back at me before disappearing into the darkness. I sat in the rain for a long moment, my heart pounding, my hands still trembling, but no longer from fear. Something had just happened. Something I couldn't explain, couldn't rationalize. The storm began to ease, and when I tried my car again, the engine turned over immediately, as if it had never failed at all. I drove the remaining miles to Maya's cabin in a daze, my mind replaying those amber eyes, that impossible moment of connection. I didn't know it then, but I'd just met my fate, and he'd been bleeding on the side of the road. Chapter 2. The Stranger at Dawn. The cabin was smaller than I'd imagined. A single-story structure of weathered wood nestled against the mountainside, surrounded by towering pines. Maya had left a key under the mat and a note taped to the door. "Stay as long as you need. You're safe here." Safe. The word felt foreign. I barely remembered stumbling inside, stripping off my soaked clothes and collapsing onto the bed. Exhaustion pulled me under like a tide, but my dreams were restless. Amber eyes, silver moonlight, a howl that sounded almost like my name. I woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the smell of coffee. Coffee I hadn't made. My heart slammed against my ribs as I sat up, clutching the blanket to my chest. The cabin was supposed to be empty. Maya was in Seattle for work. No one else had the key. I grabbed the poker from beside the fireplace and crept toward the small kitchen, my pulse thundering in my ears. A man stood at the stove, his back to me. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against a faded black t-shirt. Dark hair fell just past his collar, slightly damp as if he'd recently showered. In my shower, the lean muscles of his arms flexed as he flipped something in a pan. And despite my fear, I couldn't help but notice the predatory grace in every movement. "You can put down the poker, Sera," he said without turning around, his voice a low rumble that seemed to resonate in my chest. "If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have made breakfast." My grip tightened on the makeshift weapon. "How do you know my name? How did you get in here?" He turned slowly, deliberately, giving me time to process what I was seeing. The man was devastatingly beautiful in a way that seemed almost dangerous. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, full lips that looked cruel and sensual at the same time. But it was his eyes that stole my breath. Amber, burning gold, the exact shade I'd seen in the wolf. "You," I breathed, the poker slipping from my nerveless fingers and clattering to the floor. His mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Me? I should have run? Should have screamed. Instead, I found myself rooted to the spot, staring at this impossible man who had somehow been a wolf just hours ago. That's not possible." My voice came out as a whisper. "You were dying. You were a wolf." "Yes." He moved toward me with that same liquid grace, and I noticed the slight stiffness in his left side. the exact place where the wounds had been. And you saved my life. I don't understand. My hand instinctively went to my shoulder, covering the birthmark through my shirt. His eyes tracked the movement, darkening with an emotion I couldn't name. Don't you? Deep down, Sarah Blackwood, don't you feel that you've always known the world was more than what they told you? Hearing my full name from his lips sent a shiver down my spine. Who are you? Kael Thorne. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, but far enough to give me space. Alpha of the Silver Pine Pack. And before you ask, yes, there are more of us. We've lived in these mountains for centuries, hidden from humans who would hunt us if they knew we existed. The world tilted. I gripped the back of a chair for support. Werewolves. You're telling me werewolves are real. Shifters, he corrected gently. We're not cursed or infected. We're born this way. It's as natural to us as breathing is to you. This is insane. I laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. I'm hallucinating. The stress finally broke me, and now You're marked. Kyle's voice cut through my spiraling panic, firm, but not unkind. The symbol on your shoulder. It's not a birthmark. Sera, it's the sign of the Moonborn, humans descended from the first shamans who walked between our worlds. Healers, seers, bridge walkers. My grandmother's face flashed in my mind, the way she'd always known things she shouldn't. The way animals had flocked to her, docile and trusting. The way our family had shunned her, called her cursed, let her die alone. That's why they feared you, Kael continued, his voice softening. Humans have forgotten what the mark means, but some part of them still remembers. Still recognizes power when they see it. Tears burned in my eyes. She wasn't cursed. My grandmother, she wasn't cursed. No. Kael took another step closer. She was extraordinary. As are you. I looked up at him. This impossible man with amber eyes who claimed to be something from storybooks. Why are you here? What do you want from me? Something flickered across his face. Vulnerability, quickly masked. You healed me last night. Not just the wounds, though those are nearly gone thanks to you. He touched his side absently, but something deeper. The moment you touched me, I haven't felt that kind of peace in years. I didn't do anything special, just basic first aid. You did more than you know. His gaze held mine, intense and searching. The Moonborn have power in their touch, their presence. They can soothe the beast within us, calm the rage that sometimes threatens to consume us. My pack, we've been at war, attacks from a rival territory. I've been fighting for months, barely holding on to my humanity. The haunted look in his eyes made my chest ache. I understood that feeling. The constant battle to hold yourself together when everything inside you wanted to shatter. There's more, he said quietly. When you touched me, when your skin met mine, I felt the bond snap into place. What bond? Kael's jaw tightened, and for the first time he looked uncertain. A mate bond. Fated, unbreakable. It's rare, even among shifters. But when it happens, He shook his head. It's everything. The word hung between us like a living thing. Mate, you're saying we're... What? Destined? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice, even as something deep inside me resonated with his words. Recognized a truth I'd felt the moment our eyes met on that dark road. I know how it sounds. Kael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so humanly frustrated that it made him seem less terrifying. I'm not asking you to accept it. I'm not even asking you to believe me. But Sarah, you helped me when you had every reason to run. The least I can do is offer you the same courtesy. Courtesy? Protection. His voice turned grave. The ones who attacked me, they're tracking me. And now that my scent is mixed with yours, now that the bond has begun, he met my eyes. They'll come for you too. Fear spiked through me, cold and sharp. Then why are you here? You should leave. I'll pack up and go where? Kael's question was gentle but pointed. Back to the town that shunned you? To the family that made you feel cursed? Or maybe keep running, always looking over your shoulder, never understanding what you truly are? He had a point. A painful, accurate point. I'm offering you answers, he said. Safety, a chance to understand your gift instead of hiding it. And in return, his eyes flashed with something primal. In return, you stay alive. And maybe—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Maybe you help me remember what it's like to be more than just a weapon for my pack." I should have said no. Should have demanded he leave. Instead, I found myself asking, "What happened to you out there?" "Who attacked you?" Kael's expression darkened. "That," he said, his voice dropping to a growl, "is a longer story, and one you might want to sit down for." He gestured to the table, where 2 plates of food waited, steam still rising. Against all logic and self-preservation, I sat down, and with that simple choice, I stepped fully into a world I'd never known existed. Chapter 3, Blood and Boundaries. The eggs were perfect. Fluffy, seasoned just right, with toast that was golden brown. I ate mechanically, my mind racing too fast to actually taste anything while Kael sat across from me, his presence filling the small kitchen like a storm barely contained. 3 weeks ago, he began, his voice low and measured, a pack from the northern territories crossed into our land. The Blood Moon Pack, led by an alpha named Rowan. The name came out like a curse. They're expansionists, believe that shifters should rule openly, that humans are prey, not neighbors to coexist with. I set down my fork, my appetite vanishing. "And your pack? We've held these mountains for 8 generations. We protect the balance. Humans don't know we exist because we've been careful, selective. We hunt game, not people. We have rules." His jaw clenched. "Rowan sees that as weakness. He attacked you, not personally. He sent his enforcers, 3 of them. They caught me alone, away from pack territory." Kael's fingers tightened around his coffee mug, and I heard the ceramic crack. He loosened his grip immediately, looking almost embarrassed. "I killed 2. The 3rd escaped. But not before leaving these." He stood and lifted his shirt. My breath caught. The wounds I'd treated were now pink scars, healing impossibly fast but still visible. 5 parallel lines raked across his ribs. But it wasn't the injury that made my heart stutter. It was the rest of him. His torso was a canvas of old scars, some faded to white lines, others more recent. A jagged mark across his abdomen, what looked like burn scars on his right shoulder, evidence of a life spent fighting, surviving, protecting. "Kael," I whispered, standing without thinking, my hand reaching toward the worst of the scars before I caught myself. "I'm sorry." He lowered his shirt, his expression unreadable. "Don't be. Every mark is a lesson learned, a packmate saved, a territory defended." But his voice carried a weight that spoke of losses, not just victories. I sat back down slowly. "So Rowan wants your territory. What does that have to do with me? Everything changed the moment you touched me." Kael returned to his seat, leaning forward with an intensity that pinned me in place. Shifters can sense bonds, especially mate bonds. They're rare, powerful, and they make an alpha stronger, but they also create a vulnerability. Understanding crashed over me like cold water. "I'm a weakness. Your leverage," he corrected, anger flashing in his eyes. "If Rowan discovers the bond has formed, he'll come for you. Use you to control me, or kill you to break me." His hands fisted on the table. "The 3rd enforcer who escaped, he was downwind. He would have caught your scent mixed with mine." Fear skittered down my spine, but something else rose alongside it. Anger. I'd spent my entire life being someone's burden, someone's shameful secret, someone to hide away. "So what now?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "You want me to hide, run, pretend I don't exist? I want you safe." The fierce protectiveness in his tone made something inside me flutter. "And what you want is what matters." The question came out sharper than I intended. Kael sat back, something like respect flickering across his face. "No, what you want matters. That's why I'm here instead of simply taking you to packlands where you'd be guarded 24/7. You could do that? Just take me?" I could. His honesty was unsettling. The alpha instinct is strong, especially when it comes to protecting a mate. But you're not just my mate, Sera. You're Moonborn. You have your own power, your own choices. He paused. "Though I'd be lying if I said every cell in my body isn't screaming at me to lock you somewhere safe and stand guard." Despite everything, I almost smiled. There was something darkly appealing about his brutal honesty, the way he didn't try to hide the predator beneath the man. "Tell me about the Moonborn," I said instead. "My grandmother, she could do things. She always knew when something was wrong, when someone was hurt. Animals trusted her instantly." "Is that what I am?" Kael nodded slowly. "The Moonborn are bridges between human and shifter. Your ancestors were shamans, healers who facilitated peace between our kind centuries ago. They could sense our true nature, soothe the wolf, even amplify our healing. But humans feared that power, and over time most of the bloodlines were lost. The marks faded, diluted, forgotten. But mine didn't. Yours is strong, stronger than any I've heard of in generations." His gaze dropped to where my shoulder was hidden beneath my shirt. "May I see it?" The request was soft, almost reverent. I should have said no, should have maintained some boundary between us. But something in his expression, curiosity mixed with wonder, made me stand and turn, lifting my hair and pulling the collar of my shirt aside. I felt rather than heard his sharp intake of breath as he stood and moved closer. His fingertips hovered just above my skin, not quite touching. "It's beautiful," he murmured. "The pattern, it's old script, the language of the first shifters. What does it say? 'She who walks between worlds, who bears the moon's gift, who heals what is broken.'" His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I've only seen this in our eldest records. Sera, you're not just Moonborn, you're a legacy." I turned to face him, and suddenly he was too close, his amber eyes burning into mine with an intensity that stole my breath. This close, I could see flecks of gold in those impossible eyes, could smell something wild and clean like pine and rain. What's a legacy? A Moonborn strong enough to bond with an alpha, to become part of the pack. His hand lifted, stopping inches from my face as if he was fighting himself. To survive the claiming, a bite. His eyes dropped to my neck, then snapped away as if it took physical effort. "It's how shifters mark their mates, seal the bond completely. But for a human, even a Moonborn, it's dangerous. The venom in our bite, it can heal or it can kill. Only the strongest survive the transformation." Transformation? My voice came out strangled. I'd become... No. He stepped back quickly, putting distance between us. Not a shifter. The bite doesn't turn humans. That's myth. But it would change you. Make you stronger, faster, harder to kill. Bind you to the pack's collective consciousness. You'd feel what we feel. Be bound by our laws. His expression turned pained. "I haven't claimed you, Sera. I won't. Not unless you understand everything it means and choose it freely." The distance between us felt suddenly like a chasm. Part of me wanted to close it. The other part wanted to run screaming. "This is too much," I said finally, pressing my hands to my temples. "Yesterday I was just running from a life that didn't want me. Now I'm supposedly destined to be claimed by an alpha werewolf while being hunted by another pack. I know." Kael's voice softened. "I know it's overwhelming. But Sera, look at me, I did." Those amber eyes held mine with an intensity that felt like falling. "I will protect you," he said. "Bond or no bond, claim or no claim. You saved my life and that means something. More than that." He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "You made me feel human again. Made me remember there's more to life than fighting and leading and shouldering every burden alone. I haven't felt peace like that in years." My chest tightened. "Kael!" A howl split the morning air. It was distant but unmistakable, rising from somewhere deep in the forest. Kael's entire body went rigid, his eyes flashing brighter as his head snapped toward the sound. "They're here," he said, his voice dropping to a growl. "We need to go, now." Chapter 4. Running with wolves, Kael moved with frightening efficiency, grabbing my jacket from the hook and shoving it into my arms. "Pack only what you can carry in a backpack. Essentials. 30 seconds. My car. They'll expect that." He was already at the window, scanning the tree line with predatory focus. "We go on foot through the forest. It's the only way." My hands shook as I stuffed clothes into my backpack. Jeans, shirts, my laptop, phone charger. Practical items that seemed absurd when weighed against the impossibility of being hunted by werewolves. Another howl rose, closer this time. Then another, from a different direction. "They're surrounding us," Kael said, his voice eerily calm. 3, maybe 4. They're being cautious after what happened last time. Something feral crossed his face. Smart. Can you fight them? I can fight. But protecting you at the same time limits my options. He turned from the window, and I saw the war happening behind his eyes. The man calculating odds against the alpha who wanted to tear apart anything that threatened me. Stay close to me. Do exactly what I say when I say it. Understand? I nodded, swinging the backpack over my shoulders. If I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. There's a town 15 miles south. I'm not leaving you. The words came out before I could stop them. Kael's expression softened for just a heartbeat. Stubborn. You would know. Despite everything, his mouth quirked. Then his expression hardened again as glass shattered in the back bedroom. Back door. Go. We burst out into the morning sun, and I immediately understood why shifters owned these mountains. The forest was dense, ancient, the kind of wilderness that could swallow you whole. Pine needles cushioned our footfalls as Kael led us deeper into the trees, moving with an assurance that spoke of countless runs through this terrain. I struggled to keep up, my breath already burning in my lungs. Kael noticed and slowed fractionally, his hand finding mine and pulling me forward. The contact sent electricity up my arm, that same sense of rightness I'd felt last night when I'd touched him. He felt it too. I saw it in the way his fingers tightened around mine, the sharp breath he drew. This way, he said roughly, leading us up a steep incline. Behind us, I heard crashes through the underbrush. They weren't hiding anymore. How many? I gasped. 4, and they're not trying to be quiet. Kael's jaw clenched. They want me to know they're coming. Want me rattled? Is it working? He glanced at me, something fierce and protective blazing in his eyes. They're threatening what's mine. So yes, but not how they'd hoped. We crested the hill, and Kael pulled us behind a massive fallen tree. Stay down, he whispered, pressing me against the moss-covered bark. I could hear them now, footsteps that were too heavy, too deliberate to be fully human. Through the gaps in the branches, I saw them emerge into the clearing below. 3 men and 1 woman, all moving with that same predatory grace Kael possessed. But where Kael's presence felt controlled, contained power, these shifters radiated barely leashed violence. The tallest, a man with a shaved head and a scar bisecting his lip, lifted his nose to the wind. I smell you, Thorn, he called out, his voice carrying easily through the forest. And I smell something sweeter, something human. His smile was all teeth. Is that why you ran last time? Found yourself a little pet? Kael's growl was subsonic, vibrating through his chest. I felt it where my shoulder pressed against him. Come out and maybe we'll let her live, the woman added. She was beautiful in a dangerous way, with sharp features and eyes that gleamed with cruelty. Rowan just wants to talk, negotiate new territory lines. Rowan wants me dead, Kael said quietly, though I knew they couldn't hear him. And my pack leader list so he can absorb our lands. What do we do? I whispered. Kael's eyes were fixed on the group below, calculating. There's a river half a mile east. If we can reach it, the water will hide our scent, but we have to move fast, and they're between us and the path. So we need a distraction. No. His eyes snapped to mine. Don't even think about, I'm Moonborn, right? I was already pulling off my jacket, pressing it into his hands. You said they can sense our bond, so give them what they're looking for. Understanding and horror crossed his face. Sera, no. I'll circle around, stay upwind so they catch my scent. Draw them away from this position. My heart hammered, but my voice stayed steady. You flank them, do whatever alpha thing you need to do, then meet me at the river. You don't understand. If they catch you, they won't. I touched his face, surprising us both. His skin was warm, stubble rough beneath my palm. You said I'm strong. Stronger than I know. Trust me like I'm trusting you. Kael looked torn, every instinct clearly screaming against this plan. Then his hand covered mine, pressing it against his cheek for one brief moment. The river. 15 minutes. If you're not there, I'll be there. I'm coming back for you. And heaven help anything in my way. I believed him. He kissed my palm, a brief, burning contact, then released me. Go. Quiet and low. And Sera? His amber eyes held mine. Thank you, for being brave when you have every reason not to be. I moved before I could lose my nerve, sliding through the underbrush in the opposite direction, keeping to the shadows. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. We're survivors, Sera. They feared us because we refused to break. I wouldn't break now. When I'd circled far enough, I deliberately snapped a branch. The sound cracked through the forest like a gunshot. Below, all 4 shifters' heads turned toward the noise. There, the scarred man said, grinning. Told you I smelled human. They moved as one, flowing up the hillside with inhuman speed. I ran, crashing through the forest without trying to stay quiet now, leading them away from where Kael waited. My lungs burned. Branches tore at my clothes and skin, but I kept moving, counting seconds, trying to gauge distance. Behind me I heard a roar. Kael's voice, but not. Something primal and furious. A scream cut off abruptly, the sounds of combat, brutal and swift. I focused on running, on the downward slope that meant I was getting close to water. I could hear it now, the rush of the river over rocks. Almost there. Almost. Someone tackled me from the side. I hit the ground hard, air exploding from my lungs. The woman shifter pinned me down, her hand around my throat, eyes blazing with triumph. Found you, she hissed. Then she frowned, her nose wrinkling. What are you? You smell human, but you're... Her eyes widened as she yanked at my collar, revealing the edge of my mark. Moonborn. Oh, Rowan is going to love this. Get off me. I clawed at her hand, black spots dancing in my vision. Fragile little thing, aren't you? And Thorn thinks he can... A massive black wolf slammed into her, jaws closing around her shoulder. She screamed, releasing me as Kael, because it had to be Kael, dragged her off me with savage efficiency. I scrambled backward, gasping, watching as he threw her against a tree hard enough that I heard bones crack. She didn't get up. Kael shifted back to human form in a fluid motion that should have been impossible, kneeling beside me, his hands frantically checking me for injuries. Blood spattered his chest, not his own. The others? I croaked. Down. Not dead, but they won't follow us. His hands cupped my face, his eyes wild with fear and rage. Are you hurt? Did she... I'm okay. I grabbed his wrists, grounding us both. Kael, I'm okay. He pulled me against his chest, his heart thundering beneath my ear. Never again, he said fiercely. Never again do you play bait. I should have argued. Should have maintained my independence. Instead, I let myself be held, just for a moment, by someone who had moved heaven and earth to keep me safe. Chapter 5. Sanctuary. We crossed the river at its shallowest point, the icy water numbing my legs as Kael guided me across. He'd shifted back fully clothed somehow, another impossibility I'd have to ask about later, and hadn't let go of my hand since pulling me to my feet. There's a safe house 2 miles north, he said, his voice still rough with residual anger. It's warded, old magic your ancestors helped create. Shifters from outside my pack can't track us there. Warded, I repeated dully. Everything hurt. My throat where the woman had grabbed me, my ribs from the tackle, my lungs from running. But it was the crash of adrenaline that left me shakiest, my hands trembling as I stumbled over a root. Kael caught me immediately, steadying me against his side. Almost there. Can you make it? I nodded, not trusting my voice. The safe house was less a house and more a stone cottage that looked like it had grown from the mountainside itself. Vines covered the walls, and symbols I didn't recognize were carved into the doorframe, the same flowing script as my birthmark. Inside, it was surprisingly warm. A fire burned in the hearth despite no one being there to light it. Kael noticed my confusion. The wards respond to pack, he explained, guiding me to a worn leather couch. They recognize me, and now that our bond has begun. He gestured to the fire. They recognize you too. I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Kael disappeared into what I assumed was a bedroom and returned with blankets and a first aid kit, kneeling in front of me with the same focused intensity he'd shown during the fight. Let me see your throat. I tilted my head back, feeling his fingers, surprisingly gentle, probe the tender skin. His jaw tightened. She bruised you. If I'd been 1 second slower. He didn't finish, reaching for antiseptic instead. But you weren't. I caught his wrist. Kael, you saved me. Again. I shouldn't have let you put yourself at risk in the first place. Self-recrimination darkened his features. You're not a trained fighter. You don't know pack tactics. You should have what? Fought 4 shifters alone while protecting me? I shook my head. We survived because we worked together. Stop beating yourself up for not being omnipotent. His eyes met mine, and I saw the weight he carried, the burden of leadership, of always having to be strong enough, fast enough, perfect enough to keep everyone safe. When did you become alpha? I asked softly. He sat back on his heels, caught off guard by the question. 4 years ago, my father... He paused, pain flickering across his face. Rowan challenged him for territory. It was supposed to be a formal challenge, governed by the old laws. But Rowan doesn't follow laws. He killed your father. He ambushed him with 6 enforcers. Called it a challenge after the fact. Kael's hands fisted on his thighs. I was 24. Too young, most of the pack said. But I was my father's heir, and I was angry. He met my eyes. I hunted down every shifter who'd been there that night. Gave them the fair fight my father never got. By the time I was done, no one questioned whether I could lead. The image of Kael, younger, consumed by grief and rage, made my chest ache. And you've been fighting Rowan ever since, keeping him at bay. He wants what my father protected. These mountains, the human towns below, the balance we've maintained. Kael's voice turned bitter. Rowan wants to rule through fear, to remind humans that shifters exist and they should be terrified. He thinks we've grown weak pretending to be civilized. But you don't. I think there's strength in restraint, in choosing not to be the monster humans fear in their stories. He looked at his hands that had killed today, that bore old scars from countless fights. Though sometimes I wonder if Rowan's right, if maybe I'm just fooling myself that there's any humanity left in me. I reached out without thinking, taking one of those scarred hands in both of mine. You made me breakfast this morning. You asked permission before looking at my birthmark. You gave me choices when you could have just taken control. I squeezed his fingers. That's not a monster, Kael. That's a man trying to do right by people who depend on him. He stared at our joined hands, as if they held answers to questions he'd stopped asking. You barely know me. I know you're in pain right now. I know you've been fighting alone for 4 years. I know. I hesitated, then pushed forward. I know that when you look at me, I don't feel cursed. I feel seen. Kael's thumb traced circles on my palm, the gesture absent and intimate. You are seen, Sera. Probably more than you realize. His voice dropped. Do you know what a mate bond feels like? For a shifter? I shook my head. It's like someone turned on a light in a room you didn't know was dark. Everything sharpens, colors, sounds, sensations. But more than that. He lifted my hand, pressing it over his heart. I can feel you here. Your fear when that woman grabbed you. Your determination when you offered to be bait. Your kindness right now when you should be terrified of what I am. What we are, I corrected. If I'm Moonborn, if I'm part of this world whether I knew it or not, then I'm not fully human either. You're more human than I'll ever be. But he said it like a compliment. That's what makes you special. You bridge the gap. You can understand both sides. We sat in silence for a moment, the fire crackling, our hands still joined. I should have pulled away, should have put distance between us. But the warmth of his palm against mine felt like the first safe thing I'd experienced in longer than I could remember. What happens now? I finally asked. Those shifters, they know about me. They know about the bond. They'll report back to Rowan. He'll come himself next time. Kael's expression hardened, which means we need my pack. Safety in numbers, and shifters who are loyal to me, not him. You want to take me to your pack. Anxiety spiked through me. Will they accept a human? You're my mate. They'll accept you or answer to me. The alpha certainty in his voice should have been arrogant. Instead, it was oddly comforting. But Sera, I won't lie to you. Pack life is different. There are hierarchies, traditions, expectations. And my pack has never had a human Luna, the alpha's mate, second in command. The one who... He stopped, seeming to realize he was getting ahead of himself. I'm not saying you have to be that. The bond doesn't force roles on us. But if you come to pack lands, if you stay under my protection, they'll see you as mine, and they'll expect certain things. The weight of that settled over me. This wasn't just about running from danger anymore. It was about stepping into a role, a world, an identity I'd never asked for. But then again, I'd never asked to be marked as cursed either. Never asked to be shunned by my own family, whispered about, made to feel like something wrong and broken. At least here, with Kael, the mark that made me an outsider made me powerful. Made me wanted. Tell me about your pack, I said instead of answering. If I'm going to meet them, I should know what I'm walking into. Relief flashed across Kael's face, though he tried to hide it. My second in command is Marcus. He's been with me since the beginning, fought beside me when I challenged Rowan's enforcers. He's loyal but protective. He might not trust you immediately, because I'm human, because he'll see you as a potential weakness in my armor. Kael's honesty was brutal but appreciated. Then there's Lydia, our healer. She's older, knew my grandmother. She'll probably love you on sight because you're Moonborn. Healers respect healers. He continued describing pack members, painting a picture of a community bound by more than just shared species. They were family, complicated and imperfect and deeply connected. And somewhere in his description, I realized I was nodding, agreeing, choosing to step deeper into this impossible world. Okay, I said when he finished. Take me to your pack. Kael's expression transformed, hope and something deeper, something that made my stomach flip. You're sure? No, I admitted, but I'm sure I'd rather face the unknown with you than run back to a life that never wanted me. He raised my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that burned like a brand. Then we leave at first light. It's a day's journey on foot, but by tomorrow night, you'll be in the safest place I can offer. And then, Kael said, his amber eyes holding mine, we figure out how to survive what's coming together. Chapter 6. The mountain path we left before dawn, when the forest was still draped in darkness, and mist clung to the ground like a living thing. Kael had insisted I rest, had given me one of his t-shirts to sleep in. It swallowed me whole and smelled like him, like wild pine and something indefinably safe, while he sat by the fire, keeping watch. I'd pretended to sleep, watching him through barely open eyes. The firelight had cast his face in shadow and gold, highlighting the sharp lines of exhaustion etched around his mouth. Even in stillness, he radiated coiled tension, a predator's readiness. Now, as we moved through the forest at a pace that was easy enough for me to maintain, I noticed how often he glanced back to ensure I was following, how he positioned himself slightly ahead and to my left, deliberately putting himself between me and any potential threat from that direction. Tell me about the last time you went to Packlands, I said, needing to fill the silence that was starting to make my anxiety spiral. Was it after the fight with Rowan's enforcers? No, that was 4 days ago. I left Pack territory to scout the northern border, make sure Rowan wasn't moving forces. Kael stepped over a fallen log with casual grace. I was supposed to be back before nightfall. Instead, I got ambushed and ended up bleeding on a rainy road. Where you met me. Where I met my salvation, apparently. He said it lightly, but there was weight underneath. My pack thinks I died, or close to it. When I show up alive with a human woman in tow, there will be questions. What kind of questions? Whether you're a spy for Rowan? Whether I've been compromised? Whether our bond is genuine or some kind of trap? Kael's voice was matter-of-fact, but I caught the undercurrent of frustration. My second in command, Marcus. He's going to want your blood tested. He'll want to verify your Moonborn lineage. That's possible? Among shifters, bloodlines are everything. We can smell the truth in someone's genetics, but a formal test, administered by our healer, provides undeniable proof. He glanced back at me. You're not afraid? Should I be? Some humans would be. Having your blood drawn by people who might see you as a threat. He paused at a ridge, waiting for me to catch up. But you're not some humans. I stepped up beside him, and we stood for a moment looking out over the mountains, peaks rising like teeth against the lightening sky. It was beautiful in a way that made my chest tight. I've been afraid my whole life, I said quietly. Afraid of being discovered, of being cursed, of being wrong or broken or not enough. I'm tired of being afraid, Kael. If your pack tests my blood and discovers I'm exactly what I say I am, then I've got nothing to lose. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingertips lingering on my cheek. You're remarkable, Sera. I hope you know that. I'm terrified and running on adrenaline and coffee from a dead woman's house, I pointed out. That's not remarkable. That's exactly what's remarkable. He dropped his hand but stayed close as we continued down the ridge. Most people would have broken by now, would have demanded I take them somewhere safe and left them there. You're walking into unknown territory with a pack of shifters you've never met to support someone you've known for less than 24 hours. Fated mate, I said with a small smile. You told me destiny works in mysterious ways. I said that the bond was cosmic. I didn't promise it was easy. The forest began to change as we descended. The trees grew denser, older, more gnarled. The undergrowth thickened until I could barely see the path ahead, but Kael moved through it like he was reading a map written in scent and instinct. Around midday, we stopped to rest beside a crystal-clear stream. Kael produced food from his seemingly bottomless pack. Jerky, fresh bread wrapped in cloth, an apple. He ate mechanically while I demolished my portion, suddenly ravenous. When you shift, I said between bites. Does it hurt? Kael looked up, surprised by the question. Not anymore. When you're young, learning control, yes. It feels like your bones are breaking and reforming. But with practice, it becomes as natural as breathing. I barely feel it now. Can you control when you shift? Or does the full moon, mythology? He shook his head. The full moon does call to us, makes the shift easier, more tempting. But control comes from discipline and practice. I can shift whenever I choose. Have you always been able to? He was quiet for a moment, and I sensed I'd touched on something he didn't usually discuss. No. When I was younger, about 16, I lost control during a particularly intense emotional moment. I hurt someone. Pain shadowed his features. After that, I made it my mission to master the shift completely. Took me years, but I got there. Who did you hurt? Someone I cared about. That was all he offered, and I didn't push. We all had scars we weren't ready to fully examine. As we rested, I became aware of how close Kael sat to me. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Close enough that his scent surrounded me. Pine and rain and something wild and fundamentally male. You're overthinking something, he observed, not looking at me. I can feel it through the bond. The bond works both ways. Now that we've spent this much time together, yes. I can sense your emotions if they're strong enough. Your fear, your excitement, your... He trailed off, a muscle working in his jaw. Your desire, heat flooded my face. I'm not... You are. He finally turned to look at me, and his eyes had that molten quality that sent shivers down my spine. And it's making me want things that would be completely inappropriate until you've met my pack and confirmed you actually want to stay in this world. Kael, the claiming bite, he said quietly, as if that answered the question I was about to ask. If I touch you the way I want to, if I let myself feel everything I'm feeling through this bond, I won't be able to stop myself. And you deserve better than that. You deserve a choice made with full information, not in the heat of desire. And if I want... Sera. His hand found mine, intertwining our fingers. I've already marked you as mine in the way that matters to my pack. They'll know by my scent that we're bonded. But the bite, the claiming, that's something we do together when we're both certain, when there are no secrets between us. The implication hung between us. There were still secrets, things he hadn't told me. What else aren't you telling me? I asked directly. Kael's expression became carefully neutral. Nothing that will change what's happening between us. Nothing that matters right now. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you until you've met my pack and proven yourself trustworthy to them. He squeezed my hand gently. I know that feels like a dodge. But Sera, there are things about my history, my family, that aren't just my secrets to share. They belong to my pack, to people who might not appreciate me broadcasting them. I wanted to push, to demand full transparency, but I understood the complexity of family secrets, the way they twisted with loyalty and protection. So instead, I nodded. Okay. But after I meet your pack, after I prove myself, you're going to tell me everything. A flash of something, relief, uncertainty, something darker, crossed his face. Everything, he agreed. I promise. We finished eating in companionable silence. As the afternoon wore on and the mountains grew steeper, I felt Kael's tension increasing. His glances behind us became more frequent. His hand never strayed far from mine. They know we're coming, I said finally. Don't they? Word travels fast in the pack. By now, Marcus knows I survived, knows I'm heading home with a human. Kael's jaw tightened. Knows I've claimed a mate. Is that bad? It's unprecedented, which means unpredictable. He looked at me, his amber eyes serious. When we arrive, you need to stay close to me. Don't speak unless directly addressed. Don't challenge any of the hierarchy, even if they're cruel. Can you do that? You want me to act submissive? I want you alive. His response was fierce. My pack respects strength, but they also respect the chain of command. Breaking that, especially before you've been introduced properly, could be seen as a threat. How long do I need to pretend? Until Marcus confirms your blood. Until Lydia vouches for your Moonborn heritage. Until the pack accepts you as Luna. Kael's expression softened slightly. I know it's asking a lot, but Sera, this is for your own safety. In the distance, I heard the first howl, long and mournful. Carrying across the mountains, Kael's head snapped up, and he answered with a howl of his own, a sound that vibrated through my chest and sent every survival instinct into overdrive. It was a declaration, a claim, a warning all at once. That's Marcus, Kael said, standing and offering me his hand. They know we're here. We need to hurry. I took his hand and let him pull me to my feet. Whatever was waiting at Packlands, acceptance, rejection, danger, or something else entirely, I was walking into it with Kael beside me. At least that much was certain. Chapter 7. The Pack's Judgment. The clearing appeared suddenly, as if the forest had opened its hand to reveal what lay beneath. Stone structures rose from the mountainside, not crude shelters but genuine buildings, camouflaged by careful architecture and natural vegetation. A compound, I realized. A home shifters emerged from everywhere, from behind trees, from within buildings, from the very shadows themselves. There were at least 30 that I could see, and probably more hidden in the periphery. They were all different, varying ages, sizes, coloring, but they shared the same predatory grace, the same unsettling intelligence in their eyes. Kael's hand tightened on mine. Stay behind me. Don't let go. A man stepped forward from the crowd, and I immediately understood why Kael had mentioned him with such respect. Marcus was tall, almost as tall as Kael, with broad shoulders and a scarred face that spoke of countless battles. But it was his eyes that marked him as dangerous. Cold, analytical, the eyes of a warrior assessing threats. His gaze swept over me with clinical detachment, then locked onto Kael. You're alive, Marcus said, his voice rough as gravel. We thought you were dead. Nearly was. Kael's jaw was tight, his entire body radiating alpha authority. Rowan sent 3 enforcers. I handled it. And brought back a human. Marcus's eyes returned to me, and I felt the weight of his scrutiny like a physical thing. Explain. This was the moment, the test. I felt Kael's warning through the bond, a sensation like a hand squeezing my heart, and forced myself to remain calm, to appear submissive despite every instinct screaming to defend myself. She's Moonborn, Kael said flatly. Strong bloodline, and she's my mate. The collective inhalation from the assembled pack was audible. Whispers erupted, but they ceased immediately when Kael's eyes flashed brighter, more predatory. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Your mate is human. My mate is Moonborn. The fact that she's been living among humans doesn't change her heritage. Kael's voice dropped into dangerous territory. I brought her here under my protection. She will be treated with the respect due to a Luna. That remains to be seen. Marcus stepped closer, and I forced myself not to shrink away, despite every survival instinct demanding I flee. What's your name, human? Sera Blackwood. I kept my voice steady, quiet, submissive but not broken. I'm not a threat to the pack. Everyone is a threat until proven otherwise. But Marcus didn't sound cruel, just pragmatic. He turned back to Kael. Lydia needs to examine her. Run blood tests, verify the Moonborn claim. Of course. Kael's grip on my hand remained firm. But first, I need to shower the blood off, and Sera needs rest. She's been running for hours. Marcus studied Kael for a long moment, and I realized he was reading something in his alpha's face that was deeper than the surface story. Finally, he nodded. Fine, but no one goes anywhere until Lydia confirms the bloodline. Kael led me through the compound, and I became aware of the eyes tracking us. Some curious, some hostile, most unreadable. I kept my attention on the ground ahead, letting him guide me, trying not to appear as terrified as I felt. His quarters were on the edge of the compound, a stone structure with a surprisingly modern interior. I caught glimpses of a kitchen, a living area, and then he was pulling me into a bedroom with a massive bed and windows overlooking the mountains. You did well, he said the moment the door closed, pulling me against his chest. Better than well. You stayed calm. I'm falling apart inside, I whispered against his chest. They can't tell. That's all that matters. His hand stroked through my hair, a gesture that was becoming familiar, comforting. Marcus will come around. He just needs to verify you're not a spy. Is that what he thinks? What he thinks doesn't matter. What matters is that I claim you as mine, and most of the pack will follow because they trust me. Kael pulled back enough to look at me. But there will be those who question, who see you as a liability. It's just how pack dynamics work. How long until they accept me? Depends on what Lydia finds in your blood. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. And on you. You'll need to earn their respect, which means learning pack law, pack customs, your role as Luna. Which is? Mediator between me and the pack when necessary. Keeper of pack history, healer for those who are injured. His expression became serious. It's also a role that makes you vulnerable in certain circumstances, which is why I wanted to mark you properly before introducing you. The claiming bite protects a Luna in ways a simple bond doesn't. A knock interrupted us. Kael reluctantly released me and opened the door to reveal an elderly woman with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Lydia, I assumed. I'm here for the human, she said without preamble, but there was something in her gaze that wasn't entirely hostile. Blood test. Official pack protocol. Kael looked at me. It's necessary. I nodded, keeping my expression calm even as anxiety spiraled through me. Lydia led me to a room that looked like a combination of medical office and apothecary. Shelves lined with herbs, crystals and bottles whose contents I couldn't identify. Sit, she commanded. Gesturing to a chair, I obeyed. She was quick and efficient, swabbing my arm with something that smelled of pine and drawing blood into a vial. I watched as she held it up to the light, studying it intently. Interesting, she murmured. Very strong signature. I haven't seen Moonborn blood this pure in decades. She set the vial down and turned to me. Did you know what you were before Kael found you? No, my family. They treated the mark like a curse. Lydia's expression softened slightly. So you didn't understand your power? I understood I could heal things. Animals trusted me, but I thought it was just me, not something tied to my ancestry. She was quiet for a moment, studying me with those penetrating eyes. Your grandmother, did she have the mark? My throat tightened. Yes, but she was shunned for it. My family acted like she was cursed, like the mark was something shameful. Lydia's face darkened. Foolish humans forgetting the old ways, forgetting what the Moonborn were to us. She sat down across from me. I knew your grandmother. Briefly years ago, before my pack moved north. She was extraordinary. We tried to convince her to join us, to leave the human world behind, but she refused. Why? She had a daughter, your mother, I assume, who was human. Fully human, no mark. She refused to leave the child behind. Lydia shook her head. I never understood that choice, but I respected it. The Moonborn are supposed to be healers, bridge-walkers. Your grandmother was the truest one I've ever met. Tears burned my eyes. She died alone. My family treated her like she was wrong. She was anything but wrong. Lydia reached across and patted my hand. A surprisingly gentle gesture. And you're not either. The fact that Kael's chosen you as mate tells me everything I need to know about your strength. The alpha doesn't bond lightly. Relief flooded through me. Does that mean? It means the tests will confirm what I already know. That you're Moonborn with a strong, pure bloodline. And it means the pack will have to accept you, because I'll vouch for you. She stood, moving back to examine the vial of blood again. But acceptance and integration are two different things. There will be those who test you, who try to prove you're not worthy. Are you prepared for that? I'll do what I have to do. Good answer. Lydia smiled, and it transformed her weathered face. You're your grandmother's granddaughter, after all. When I returned to Kael's quarters, he was waiting by the window, freshly showered and changed. He turned immediately, reading my expression. Lydia confirmed the bloodline, I said. She knew my grandmother. Kael's eyebrows rose. She did? Apparently my grandmother was supposed to join a pack but refused because of my mother. I moved toward him, drawn by the bond that was becoming increasingly comfortable, increasingly necessary. Lydia said she was extraordinary. Kael pulled me close, and I heard the tension leave his body. Then you come from powerful stock. The pack will respect that. Marcus won't. Marcus will come around, Kael promised, pressing a kiss to my hair. Give it time. But even as he said it, I sensed the undercurrent of uncertainty through our bond. Marcus's acceptance wouldn't come easily, and there was still the matter of Kael's secret, the thing he'd promised to tell me, the person he'd hurt when he lost control. Something told me that secret was connected to Marcus in ways I didn't yet understand, and it would test us far more severely than any external threat ever could. Chapter 8. Pack Bonds and Buried Truths. 3 weeks into pack life, and I was beginning to understand the hidden language of hierarchy and allegiance. I learned to read the subtle shifts in body language, how Kael's presence commanded respect without him saying a word, how the younger shifters deferred to Marcus with something that looked like fear, how the few females in the pack watched me with a mixture of curiosity and calculation. Lydia had become my anchor in the chaos. She taught me pack law, the traditions of the Moonborn, and the delicate balance required to serve as Luna. But more than that, she'd become a confidant, someone who understood both worlds because she'd lived in one and chosen to stay in the other. You're settling in well, she observed one afternoon, as we worked in the compound's garden, harvesting herbs for healing salves. Better than I expected, honestly. I'm terrified most of the time, I admitted. I just hide it better now. Lydia smiled, her weathered hands moving with practiced efficiency. That's wisdom. Fear is useful if you don't let it control you. She paused, studying me. Has Kael told you about the incident yet? My hand stilled. What incident? The reason Marcus doesn't trust him. The reason half the pack questions his judgment. Lydia sat back on her heels. It's his story to tell, not mine. But I thought he would have explained by now. He said he'd tell me everything after I proved myself to the pack. And have you? Lydia vouches for my bloodline. Most of the younger shifters respect me. But Marcus... I shook my head. Marcus looks at me like I'm a bomb waiting to explode. Marcus looks at you like that because you're exactly that, a catalyst for change. And change frightens him, because the last time things changed drastically, he nearly died. Lydia's expression became distant. 4 years ago, there was a female shifter named Elena. She was beautiful, ambitious, and absolutely ruthless. She came to the pack claiming to be a refugee from a dying territory. My stomach twisted. What happened? She seduced Kael. Or he thought she did. In retrospect, it was clearly calculated. She wanted to be Luna, wanted power. She played on his loneliness, his grief over his father's death. Lydia's hands clenched. Marcus was the one who discovered the truth. She was actually a spy for Rowan, gathering intelligence about our defenses. The world tilted slightly. Did Kael? He didn't claim her. He never got that far because Marcus moved fast. But Kael found out what she was, and he lost control. Lydia looked at me directly. In his rage, he shifted unexpectedly. Kael's strong enough that he can maintain his human mind while in wolf form. But that day, the wolf took over completely. He nearly killed Marcus before Lydia managed to bring him back to himself. I felt sick. That's why he told me he'd hurt someone. Yes. And that's why Marcus doesn't trust easily. That's why he sees every human, every outsider, as a potential threat. Lydia reached over and squeezed my hand. But you're different. You're Moonborn. You're strong enough to anchor him if he starts losing control again. I don't know if I can do that. You already have been. The bond between you is stabilizing him in ways I haven't seen in years. Lydia stood, brushing dirt from her knees. He needs this, Sera. He needs you. And I think, if you're honest with yourself, you need him too. That night, I found Kael on the cliff overlooking the valley, silhouetted against the star-filled sky. He didn't turn as I approached, but I felt him sense my presence through the bond. Lydia told you, he said quietly. About Elena, about Marcus. I sat beside him, not touching but close enough that I could feel his warmth. Why didn't you tell me yourself? Because I was ashamed. His voice was rough. Because I was foolish enough to ignore what my instincts were screaming at me. Because I hurt someone I care about because I couldn't control my own rage. You were grieving. You were alone. That's not an excuse. Kael finally looked at me, and I saw the weight of 4 years of guilt in his amber eyes. I nearly destroyed Marcus because I let a woman manipulate me. How can I be alpha when I'm so easily compromised? You're not compromised now. I took his hand, lacing our fingers together. The Kael I know is honorable and protective, and works so hard to do right by his pack. The Kael you know hasn't been properly tested since Elena. His grip tightened. What if Rowan finds another way to use you? What if I lose control again? Then Marcus will be ready. Lydia will be ready. I'll be ready. I turned to face him fully. Kael, you're terrified that you're a monster. But everything you've done since Elena proves you're not. You chose restraint with me. You're choosing control every single day. He cupped my face in his hand, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. The claiming bite, Sera. Once I do it, I can't take it back. You'll be bound to me completely. If I ever lose control again, I trust you. How? His voice cracked. How can you trust me when I don't trust myself? Because I feel what you feel through the bond. I feel your fear, your guilt, your absolute certainty that you never want to hurt anyone again. I leaned forward until our foreheads touched. That's not a monster, Kael. That's a man who made a mistake and spent 4 years making sure he never makes it again. He pulled me into his lap, and I felt the moment something shifted in him, like a weight he'd been carrying finally finding a place to rest. His lips found mine, and the kiss was desperate and tender at the same time, full of gratitude and something deeper that made my whole body ache. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. I love you, he said simply. I know it's too fast. I know we barely know each other. But Sera, I love you. The words hit me like lightning, because I realized I'd been feeling the same thing for days. This wasn't just fate or bonding or destiny. This was real, terrifying, genuine love. I love you too, I whispered. Then let me claim you. His hand moved to my neck and I felt the gentlest pressure. Let me mark you as mine so the entire pack knows you're protected, that you're irreplaceable. Let me bind myself to you completely. I should have been afraid, should have asked for more time, but through the bond, I felt only his love, his commitment, his absolute devotion. Yes, I said. Kael's eyes flashed brighter, the gold deepening to molten amber. He pulled my hair aside, exposing my neck. I felt his teeth graze my skin, a promise more than a threat. This will hurt, he said, but only for a moment. He bit down. Fire and electricity shot through me, starting at my neck and radiating outward to every nerve ending. It should have been agony, but instead it was like coming home. I felt the moment his venom entered my bloodstream, felt it change me at a cellular level. Stronger, faster, more connected to the wild beating beneath my skin. But more than that, I felt him. Every emotion, every thought, every piece of his soul suddenly accessible to me through the bond. His love was a living thing, vast and overwhelming and absolutely certain. When he pulled back, his mark was visible on my neck, a perfect impression of his teeth that glowed faintly with silver light. "Mine," he said, his voice dropping into that dangerous alpha register. "You're mine." "Yours," I agreed, running my hands over his shoulders, feeling the vibration of his possessiveness through the bond and finding it somehow reassuring. "And you're mine," he laughed, a real, genuine sound that held no darkness. "Yes, I am, but outside Kael's quarters." I didn't see Marcus step away from the window, his expression unreadable as he processed what he'd just witnessed. The Luna had been claimed, which meant the stakes of everything had just changed dramatically. Chapter 9: The Challenge. The tension hit me the moment we emerged from Kael's quarters the next morning. The entire compound seemed to hold its breath, and every eye tracked our movements with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Kael's hand never left the small of my back, and I realized he was deliberately displaying the claiming mark visible on my neck to anyone who looked close enough. Marcus was waiting by the central fire, and his expression was exactly what I'd feared: furious. "A formal claiming," he said, his voice carrying across the compound. "Without consulting the Pack Council. Without even informing your second-in-command." Kael's body went rigid. "The Luna is my choice to make, Marcus. You know that. The Luna is supposed to stabilize the pack, not destabilize it." Marcus stepped closer, and several other shifters moved with him. His supporters, I realized. "You've claimed a human, a creature we've known for 3 weeks, and bound yourself to her completely. What happens when Rowan figures out how to use her against you? What happens when your judgment is compromised again?" "My judgment is sound," Cole said flatly. "And if you question it, then you can challenge me for leadership." The words hung in the air like a blade suspended above water. "Is that an invitation?" Marcus's eyes flashed gold. "It's a statement of fact." Kael squeezed my back gently. "But I'd prefer my second-in-command, and I didn't come to blows. So I'm asking you directly, do you accept Sera as Luna?" Marcus's gaze slid to me, and I felt the weight of his assessment. In that moment, I understood what Lydia meant about being a catalyst. My presence had forced something to come to a head that had been festering since Elena. I stepped forward, moving slightly away from Kael. It was a calculated risk. Appearing too dependent on him would only confirm Marcus's fears that I was a weakness. But appearing too independent might be seen as challenging his authority. "I don't expect your approval," I said quietly, keeping my voice steady. "I expect your protection, the same way you protect every other member of this pack. That's what Luna means, doesn't it? Part of the family?" "Luna means vulnerability," Marcus spat. "It means a soft spot Rowan can exploit. Then test me." The words came out before I could stop them, and I felt Kael's tension spike through the bond. "Whatever you need to prove I'm not a liability, do it. But do it as someone testing a packmate, not as someone looking for reasons to reject me." For a long moment, Marcus was silent. Then something shifted in his expression, not acceptance, but a grudging respect for the challenge. "Fine," he said. "Tomorrow at dawn. Combat training with the pack warriors. If you survive without needing magical healing or pack protection, I'll consider you worthy of the mark." "Agreed," I said before Kael could protest. That night, I felt the full force of his fury through the bond. We were in his quarters, and he paced like a caged predator. "You can't fight trained shifter warriors," he said, his voice tight with anger and fear. "You'll be killed. Then teach me." I sat on the edge of his bed, watching him. "You said I'm stronger now, faster. Teach me how to use it. Sera, Kael, Marcus will never accept me if I hide behind you. And if your second-in-command doesn't trust me, the entire pack will question our bond." I stood and moved to him, placing my hands on his chest. "I need to do this. Please." He looked down at me, and I felt the war happening inside him. The alpha who wanted to protect me against the man who understood that real strength sometimes meant letting go. "Okay," he said finally. "We train all night, and if I think you're going to get seriously hurt, I'm stopping it." He taught me everything: how to use my newfound speed, how to shift my weight to maximize my strength, how to read an opponent's movements before they made them. My Moonborn heritage gave me advantages: faster healing, heightened senses, an instinctive understanding of shifter physiology that let me predict their moves. But more importantly, Kael taught me to trust myself. When dawn broke, I was exhausted but steady. Kael walked me to the training grounds where Marcus and 5 of his best warriors waited. The entire pack had gathered to watch. "Rules are simple," Marcus announced. "You survive 3 minutes against the warriors without yielding. No magic, no shifting. We want to see what you can do as a human Luna." I nodded, taking my position in the center of the ring. Kael stood at the edge, his expression carefully blank, but I could feel his presence through the bond. Steady, present, believing in me. The first warrior attacked before I was ready, and I barely dodged the swipe of his claws. The second came from my left, and muscle memory kicked in. I pivoted, used his momentum against him, sent him flying into the dirt. They underestimated me. That was my advantage. I fought with everything Kael had taught me, channeling the wild strength of my heritage into precise, controlled movements. The training ground erupted into chaos, some shifters cheering, others shocked at my ability to hold my own. But I was tiring. 3 warriors pressed in from different angles, and I realized I couldn't win this through speed alone. I needed strategy. I ran, straight toward Kael, toward the edge of the training circle. The warriors followed, and in that moment, I understood something about the Moonborn that neither Lydia nor Kael had explicitly taught me: the power to amplify, to bridge the gap between human and shifter. I turned and planted my hands on the nearest warrior's chest. Power flowed through me, not his power, but his own strength reflected back at him, amplified by my connection to the primal magic of the earth. He went flying backward, slamming into the ground hard enough to knock the wind from him. The second warrior hesitated, and that hesitation was all I needed. I moved inside his guard, pressed my palm to his heart, and let the Moonborn power surge through him. He collapsed, gasping, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his own strength turned inward. The third warrior looked at me with something approaching terror and stepped back. The crowd had gone completely silent. 3 minutes, Marcus said quietly. "You lasted 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I turned to look at him, breathing hard, my body shaking with exertion and adrenaline. "That's enough? That's..." Marcus paused, and I saw the moment his resistance cracked. "That's more than enough." He knelt, and every shifter in the compound knelt with him, a gesture of submission to the Luna, of acceptance of the pack hierarchy with me in my rightful place. Kael caught me as I stumbled forward, and I collapsed against him. "I did it," I whispered. "You did." His lips found my ear, his voice vibrating with pride. "You did it, mate." But as the pack began to disperse, I caught Marcus's eye. He watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read, no longer hostile, but something else. Something almost like understanding, as if he'd seen in me what Kael had seen all along. Later, as we lay entwined in Kael's bed, his hand stroking lazy patterns across my collarbone, I asked the question that had been nagging at me. What was that? The power I used? That wasn't just enhanced strength. "That's your true gift," Kael said softly. "Moonborn don't just heal or sense, they amplify. They take the raw power in shifters and magnify it, strengthen it, sometimes even redirect it." He paused. "Your grandmother could do the same thing. According to pack records, she used it to broker peace between territories that were on the brink of war. By showing them their own strength, by showing them they were stronger together than apart." Kael pressed a kiss to my forehead. "That's your real power, Sera. Not to fight or to dominate, but to help others see their best selves. To amplify what's good in them. And if someone uses that against me, then we face it together," Kael promised. "You and me, Luna and Alpha, Moonborn and Shifter." I believed him. but somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a sound that carried with it a promise of violence, a claim of territory, a declaration of war. Rowan was coming, and he was bringing everything he had. Chapter 10. The War at Our Doorstep. They arrived on the third day after dawn, broke like spilled blood across the sky. Rowan's pack emerged from the forest in a coordinated wave, at least 40 shifters moving with military precision. But it was Rowan himself who caught everyone's attention. He was massive even in human form, with dark hair and eyes that held the flat, predatory intelligence of something that had stopped feeling most emotions centuries ago. Kael stood beside me on the compound's highest platform, his hand never leaving mine. Below us, our pack assembled, Marcus at the forefront with the other warriors, Lydia coordinating the civilians toward the protected caves deeper in the mountain. "He's going to challenge you formally," I said through the bond. I could feel Kael's tension, his readiness for violence. "Isn't he?" "Yes, for pack leadership and territory rights." Kael squeezed my hand. "If I lose, Rowan takes everything, including you." The thought of being separated from him, of Rowan claiming me, sent ice through my veins. But more than that, I felt the absolute certainty in Kael's mind that he wouldn't lose, that he would tear apart anyone who tried to take what was his. "I'm fighting with you," I said. "No." Kael turned to look at me, his eyes already beginning to shift toward Wolf. "You stay back. You use your power if needed, but you don't engage directly. Kael, I can't protect you if I'm worried about you in combat," he said fiercely. "Let me do this! Let me be strong enough for both of us." I wanted to argue, but I felt the truth in his words through our bond. Some fights had to be fought alone. Rowan's voice boomed across the compound. "Thorn, I've come to settle this once and for all. Your pack or mine, your death or mine." Kael descended from the platform with fluid grace, and I watched as he began to shift. His body rippled and reformed, clothes shredding as fur erupted across his skin. The transformation was beautiful and terrible. In seconds, he was a massive black wolf, easily 8 feet at the shoulder, all coiled power and deadly intent. Rowan shifted as well, his wolf form even larger than Kael's, his fur a deep crimson that looked like dried blood. They circled each other, sizing up, and I felt the weight of every battle they'd ever fought, every wound they'd traded, every grudge that had festered for years. They collided with the force of an explosion. The sound of their clash echoed across the mountains, teeth snapping, claws raking, bodies slamming together. Rowan had size and experience. Kael had something harder to quantify, a righteous fury that came from protecting something he loved. My pack fought Rowan's in coordinated bursts across the compound. Marcus led the charge against Rowan's enforcers, and I was amazed at how the warriors worked as a unit, covering each other's backs, exploiting weaknesses, showing the discipline of a pack that had learned to fight together rather than for personal glory. But Rowan's pack was larger, and slowly they began to push us back. I felt Kael's pain through the bond, a rake of claws across his shoulder, a bite on his flank. He was giving as good as he got, but Rowan was relentless, and exhaustion was beginning to set in. Without thinking, I jumped down from the platform and ran toward the battle. "Sera, no!" Kael's mental scream came through the bond, but I wasn't running toward Kael. I ran toward the Blood Moon warriors who were systematically overrunning our defensive position. I pressed my palms against the nearest one, let the Moonborn power surge through him, not harmful but amplifying, showing him his own strength turned inward until he was overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was capable of. He fell, gasping. The next warrior came at me, and I sidestepped, using the same technique. The third tried to flank me, and Marcus appeared at my side, fighting with lethal efficiency. "Stay close to me," Marcus shouted, and I realized he wasn't trying to protect me so much as fight alongside me. We moved as a unit, Marcus handling the direct combat while I amplified our warriors, helped them see their own power, their own strength. It wasn't enough to turn the tide completely, but it was enough to hold the line. Above us, Kael and Rowan were still locked in their deadly dance. Rowan was winning through sheer attrition. Every fight had a winner and a loser, and even the strongest alpha could be worn down. Kael was being worn down, I felt it through the bond, the spreading exhaustion, the way his movements were becoming slower, less precise. Rowan sensed it too and began pressing harder, driving Kael backward toward the cliff edge. Without conscious thought, I ran toward them. Sera! Kael's mental scream was raw with panic. Don't! But I was already there, pressing my hands against his wolf form. Power flowed through me. His power, amplified and reflected back. Suddenly, he could feel every ounce of his strength, every bit of his capability, magnified until it was almost overwhelming. Kael's wolf threw back its head and roared. When he came at Rowan again, he was unstoppable. Each movement was faster, stronger, more precise. Rowan tried to counter, but he was suddenly fighting an opponent who had crossed some invisible threshold into something beyond normal alpha capability. Kael's jaws closed around Rowan's shoulder, and he threw the larger wolf across the compound like it weighed nothing. Rowan hit the ground hard, shifted back to human form, coughing blood. Yield, Kael growled, his voice distorted by his half-shifted form, or I end this permanently. For a long moment, Rowan was silent. Then, with visible hatred, he nodded. I yield. The territory is yours. The pack is yours. Kael released him, and I felt the adrenaline crash through my mate like a wave. He shifted back to human form, and I was there immediately, pressing my hands to his wounds, letting my Moonborn energy flow into him. The gashes began to close, the bruises fading. You shouldn't have done that, Kael said, even as his hands pulled me close. You could have been killed. We're stronger together, I said simply. You told me that. His lips found mine, and the kiss was desperate and possessive and full of gratitude. Around us, the Blood Moon pack was retreating, carrying their wounded, vanishing back into the forest from which they'd emerged. But Rowan remained, his eyes fixed on me with pure hatred. This isn't over, he said to Kael. You've won the battle, but the war is far from over. And next time I'll know exactly how to break you. He meant me. He meant that he would come for me specifically, would use me as leverage. Kael growled, a sound so primal it made my skin prickle. If you ever come near her again, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth. I'm sure you will, Rowan said, something almost like amusement in his voice. Then he shifted and was gone, his form disappearing into the darkness of the forest. The compound fell silent. Then slowly, our pack began to emerge from their defensive positions, assessing casualties, checking on wounded packmates. Lydia appeared at our side almost immediately, her healer's hands already moving over Kael's injuries despite the fact that most of them had already closed. That was incredible, she murmured, glancing between us. What you did with the amplification, I've never seen anything like it. It just happened, I said quietly. That's how true power works, Lydia said. She squeezed my shoulder. Your grandmother did the same thing in the final battle of her time. She amplified the pack's abilities so much that they won a fight they should have lost by every calculation. Marcus approached, his expression carefully neutral. The Luna saved our lives today. Without the amplification, we would have lost this battle. Kael looked at me with such fierce pride that it made my heart ache. Yes, she did. As the night wore on and pack members helped move the wounded to Lydia's healing room, I stayed close to Kael. Through our bond, I felt the weight of what he'd revealed today. Not just his strength, but his absolute willingness to go to the edge of his power to protect what was his. And I realized that I would do the same for him. We had moved beyond fated mates or cosmic destiny. We had become something far more dangerous. We had become a team,